One of the best ways to grow your music production skills is to learn from other people's tracks. Especially if you tend to get stuck with certain musical ideas and don't know where to take them, there are actually thousands, if not millions, of finished tracks out there which you could use as a manual or at least for inspiration. But you shouldn't just copy other people's ideas, right? Well, in this video I want to talk about my approach and perspective when it comes to this topic and put it into practice with one of the tracks that we've been working on. So let's go. To show you my approach when it comes to learning from other tracks, I created an artist chart over on volumo.com. And my plan for this video is to kind of walk you through a few things which I picked up from these tracks and then implement them into the production that we've been working on in the last couple of videos. And one of the cool things about Volumo is that you can effectively preview a whole track. So let's say we want to check out this remix by Garrett David and see what's happening in the intro. We can just click over here and have a listen. Really nice garagey vibes. But now if we want to get a better overview of the track and check out another part, we can just click here, for example. So that's really nice. And of course, if you want to learn from other tracks or use them as a reference for your mixes, you want to have them in high quality. And one of the other cool things about Volumo is that you're actually paying the same price for WAV as you are paying for MP3s on most other platforms. And on top of that, they're paying out 75% of the revenue to artists. So you're paying less, artists are making more. Seems like a real win-win. They were so kind to sponsor this video, so feel free to check out the link in the description leading to my chart. If you're signing up over there, you're not just supporting a cool platform, but also indirectly this channel. But let's now jump into Ableton Live and make some music. And as you might remember, we had this musical idea so far, right? Rhythm. So that's already a cool basis, but not enough yet to create a whole track, right? We have to get some more elements in there. And let's maybe start with the bass line, right? We had kind of this stair shape where it's walking down a little bit. Like in the last video I said, it's a stair walking down, going up again, walking down. If we want to create some variation, let's maybe check for another track which also has a simple bass line. Let's go for this one, You Gave Me Soul by Subsonic. Nice. The bassline is also quite subtle, but I feel like there are like two movements in there. One time the bassline is kind of walking up, but then it's also walking down. So if we take that as an inspiration for our track idea, our variation that's walking down, we can easily turn that into something of a stair that's walking up. So let's listen with the drums and compare those two. The other one. Okay. Right after that. So they don't have to come exactly after each other, but they could be like different parts, for example. When it comes to the chord step, let's have a quick listen what we had there. Okay. Kind of a simple rhythm. If we jump back into the track, you can hear how it's kind of also doing like this two semitone step, but it's staying there for a while. Let's have a quick listen. It's just two chords. So taking that as inspiration, we can create a variation where instead of just making this step down and jumping right back up, we can just say, okay, we're doing the step down one later, but then we're staying down there. So let's listen to that. Nice. With bassline 1. Cool. So we're creating some variations in here, some material which will be nice to create the full arrangement in the end. And if I then listen to this track a bit later, there's actually a pretty cool switch. And I really like switches in music because if you just have one chord idea, it gets a bit boring. So let's see, I think it was around 350. We're still in the same vibe. It's kind of doing a key change. And the piano comes in. That's pretty cool having a switch like that, right? So if we create some more variations for the chord, I call this switch 1 and 2, this could just be another sound. So, but here, instead of just doing exactly the same thing, I also switched up the rhythm a little bit. And for example, instead of just in this variation, we're going down 2 semitones and then jumping up back 2 semitones. Here, let's just do 1 and have more of a chromatic movement instead of diatonic. So let's listen to that. Okay, works with the same bassline though. And then also a variation. So we're effectively doing a similar thing that we're doing here, just that in these two, instead of going down 2 and going back up, we're going down 1. And for the second variation, instead of going down 2 and staying down there, we're going up 1. So like this, we're already creating some differences. In a way, if you have a switch like this, sometimes things don't work out that easily. So for example, if we now play this for 2 bars, let's switch to switch 2. It's a bit... The switch is a bit too strong. It doesn't work out like this nice key change in the track that we were listening to. But luckily, there are also some cool tracks in here, other tracks which have some cool switches. And one of the people really well known for having crazy switches and transition in his tracks is obviously Sweely. And I have a track in here, a remix for Tommy Vicari Jr. Let's have a quick listen to that. And then in this part, kind of like this, but the switch is quite drastic, right? But we can tell, okay, there is a breakdown in between. So maybe for the arrangement, if I want to switch from these ideas over here to these ideas eventually, maybe we can find a way to create a breakdown and make that happen. So we have some variation for the bass line, we have some variation for the stab. Now we want to layer in some sounds, right? And once you have chord sounds, they're taking up quite a lot of mid-range, and you need some other textures to kind of have other elements which can still cut through and kind of add some variation, but not just muddy everything up and get buried below this chord sound. So I just threw some sounds in here. One, we have this Juno chord. Let's listen to that in solo. I made this from scratch in Diva. It's just a few saw waves and square waves. But if you leave the filter relatively wide open, there's going to be some high end. It's going to cut through. It sounds a bit thin, but that actually works well with this kind of slightly fat sounding chord sound. So let's listen with the bass line. So that was just to grab the sound. And then I grabbed my house piano, which is also like a thin, spiky sound. So let's play these together. That's pretty nice. And here, this was a chord step, right? But it's effectively playing a C sharp minor 9. A minor 9 chord is pretty dense because it has so many notes. So I wanted to have something slightly thinner, which I did for this as well as for the other sound. So what we have in here is basically if you bring this down by an octave and then you were to draw in the C minor 9, you basically just have the top 3 notes of that chord, which by itself would be a G sharp minor. Bring this back up, you just have an inversion of that. So the chord is sitting slightly higher, doesn't have as many notes, and that becomes a cool layer. Nice. Let's bring in the vocal samples.
Rhythm, keep dancing. Rhythm, keep dancing. Rhythm, keep dancing.
Another idea that I kind of picked up, some of this moodiness came from these like jazzy samples. And what I also noticed is that even if things get a bit dissonant, it can be kind of nice. So having a constant sound like this, which is then kind of playing behind this whole thing, and stays the same. When we now switch between variations, kind of connects them in a way, which I find really nice. Almost like a melodic glue from like a arrangement type of perspective. Something which I also liked in one track by DJ Stu, there was some female vocal chops or samples in there, which seemed almost more like a chord. So let's check that out. I think this. Really cool how like this ko comes in there. I kind of like how this is a vocal sample, but at the same time it seems like a chord step. So I looked for something similar and I found this loop. In this loop there are some annoying things which I'm going to cut out, but now we obviously kind of have to start arranging things a little bit. And for me, I just start jamming things out. So I said like, okay, let's start with the drums. And let's just see what we come up with. So I'm bringing in the bass. Nice. Kind of a simple stacking up type of arrangement.
Rhythm.
Vocal sample.
Rhythm.
Cool.
Rhythm. Rhythm that you want.
Chord.
Rhythm. Rhythm. Rhythm.
Nice.
Rhythm that you want. Rhythm. Keep dancing. Rhythm.
This one might have been in there earlier, but
Rhythm. Keep dancing. Rhythm.
cool.
Rhythm that you want. Dancing.
Drums out.
Rhythm. Keep dancing. Rhythm that you want. Dancing. Rhythm. Keep dancing. Rhythm.
Maybe here we can actually take this out. Okay. Now it will eventually become time for bassline number 2.
Rhythm that you want.
Okay, nice. You might eventually want to create a pad for this, which was also nice. Vocal sample's gone for a moment. Nice, with this vocal step. This is already cool. Let's see if we can work towards this segue to get in here. Maybe here.
Keep dancing. Keep dancing. Keep dancing.
Kind of an unexpected switch.
Keep dancing. Keep dancing.
Then another thing which I noticed in a bunch of tracks but really liked, especially in one of them, is this track House Control. I really like certain filter sounds and movements on samples. Let's have a quick listen to this one. I like that. So I found a sample which I found kind of cool. And I kind of felt like this connected relatively nicely with the second variation that we had. So once we are at this point,
keep dancing. Rhythm.
You can bring this in.
Rhythm that you want. Rhythm that you want. Rhythm that you want.
Maybe kill this.
Rhythm that you want. Rhythm that you want. Rhythm that.
Okay, some things were overlapping, but we can mix that up.
Rhythm that you want. Rhythm that.
Okay, some effect sounds here could be cool.
Rhythm that you want. Rhythm.
Bring up the volume a bit, maybe.
Rhythm that you want. Rhythm that.
And we're gonna bring in the chord and the bass line.
Rhythm that you want. Rhythm.
That's cool.
Rhythm
drop the sample eventually, and then
dance, rhythm, rhythm, that you dance, rhythm, rhythm, keep dance, rhythm, that you dance, rhythm, keep dance, rhythm,
and then sample again.
rhythm.
Yeah, that's me jamming out a little bit. I usually try, I'm a kind of a throw stuff against the wall and see what sticks kind of person. Since I DJ'd mainly before I started producing, I like to just find some sounds and then start selecting and moving everything together. Yeah, I hope you found this helpful or interesting. Let me know in the comments what you think. For me personally, I think it makes a lot of sense to kind of use tracks for inspiration and dive in there. But the more of a beginner you are, the closer I would work to those tracks that you like to get like certain basics and building blocks in there. I always like to say, before you can write a poem, you kind of have to learn the words and the language. So don't shy away from really diving into there and trying to replicate certain tracks one for one. Even if you copy things, your first tracks are probably not going to be the ones being signed at a big label and played all over the world. So I think the more of a beginner you are, the closer, at least sometimes I would work with tracks. Because I feel like oftentimes when people get stuck with their productions, it's because they don't have the musical building blocks to create a full track yet. And it's important to kind of get those in and understand how a track works. And as if you're not able to kind of replicate a track that you know that's already out there and get like a finished track that way, how are you going to be able to create a track completely on your own? I think if you study any type of instrument, learn how to play any type of instrument, you usually start with compositions of other people to get the basics in. That's just my perspective. I really like these reference tracks. Make sure to check out Volumo. The link is in the description. They're really trying to do things right, be fair to artists, and build a nice catalog where you can find good music quickly. And I've been browsing on their site and been finding quite a lot of nice stuff. So check them out. And I'm looking forward to see you in the next couple of videos. Ciao.